These are players that you should be trading for in your Dynasty Fantasy Football leagues. Good trade targets for both rebuilders and contending teams. So send some trade offers for these guys. Let's start first with Puka Nacua. And Puka obviously has been a huge disappointment for a lot of teams this year, including a lot of my own. I have a lot of Puka Nacua, and so his injury, as you know, who was my first or second round startup pick in Dynasty Startups last year, it's been really disappointing. But when you're looking at a market value analysis of Puka Nacua, he has dropped from being the wide receiver 6 pretty much the entire offseason to the wide receiver 11. He's dropped from being an early second round pick in Dynasty to being an early third round pick in Dynasty. And the main reason for this is because he got hurt. And I say the main reason because there really is no other reason that Puka Nacua has lost value in Dynasty leagues. When you're looking at what he's able to do his first week, he had 4 targets, 4 receptions for 35 yards in the first quarter when he was playing, and then he didn't do anything. I mean, the dude it's not like he was like, oh, he didn't produce this year before he got injured, so we have to drop his value. No, he's literally dropping in value because he's missing 5 to 7 weeks here. Yeah. This is the definition of a Dynasty buy. We play Dynasty in 3-year windows, and we're talking about 25% to 35% of a year he's missing, and we're freaking out and dropping him a whole round in Dynasty startup value because of that. And you're talking about Puka Nacua, a guy who just had 160 targets in his rookie season in the NFL, who's playing with Matthew Stafford, who is playing with Cooper Kupp. But again, they're both going to be able to produce. And Cooper Kupp is banged up, and Cooper Kupp has been consistently banged up. And so Puka is purely being devalued for injury purposes. And in Dynasty Fantasy Football, when there are when injuries affect Dynasty value, we pounce and we go buy low. And so we're going to buy low on Puka Nacua. And when I'm looking on Keep Trade Cut on who he's valued next to in Dynasty Fantasy Football, and one thing I'll say about Keep Trade Cut, during the season, Keep Trade Cut is basically how did this player perform last week? So like if you look at Jamar Chase, it's like boom, boom. If you look at CD, it's like he went down, and then week 2 he went back up, and then he went back down again, which is stupid because a player's single week performance should not affect their long-term value in Dynasty Fantasy Football. That's why Keep Trade Cut is a hot garbage dumpster fire. But for Puka Nacua, he's being valued, like I said, in the early third now. The 30th most valuable player on Keep Trade Cut. He's being valued behind Trey McBride right now. He's still being valued behind Sam Laporta and Anthony Richardson. I would send all 3 of those guys in a freaking heartbeat for Puka Nacua. Yeah. Not to mention, he's being valued equivalently to Justin Herbert, Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill, CMC, Olave, Devonta, London even. I mean, I'll still take Puka over those guys. I will. So I think everybody that you're seeing in that range, I would flip Puka for. And look, in Dynasty, we don't like to send 1-for-1 trades, so we'll send a 2-for-2, get Puka back, and maybe send one of these guys away, and then swap another position maybe. But I think Puka, in terms of what's his value going to do? What's his value going to do when he comes back and he's healthy? It's going to go up. He's not going to produce. And I'm confident placing my bet on that. I'm confident buying him. And I'll send any of the guys in his range for Puka Nacua in Dynasty Fantasy Football because I think he's a good value. I think he still could help your team this year. He'll definitely help you for the next 2 years. And he's super value insulated, right? He is a 23-year-old wide receiver 1. Yeah, there's nothing better. A high target volume wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. This is a prime example of a good buy. I'll go buy Puka Nacua right now.
Yeah, and honestly, just kind of like you were saying, a lot of it is just going to be because of injury. You're going to see that with so many players when they go down with injury. You saw with AJ Brown a little bit of a dip when he's been out for a couple of games because you expected him to produce more, right? And he's not. And when so many people are looking at contending right now, I think a lot of the reason that Puka Nacua is going from untouchable to now you can, probably get him for a decent price is you've got teams that can't afford to wait 5 more weeks for him to come back, right? They're serious contenders, heavy contenders. Maybe they don't have their 25 first round pick, so they need to win now. And if Puka Nacua, who they were depending on being on their starting lineup to produce for them for the next 5 weeks to win them games, isn't doing that, maybe they do have to sell a little bit low knowing that they've got to win now. So that really is going to be one of the biggest reasons that you can go get Puka Nacua. I think you can take advantage of your league mates, honestly, who are trying to contend really hard at the moment. And I think one of the bigger validators for why we think Puka is such a big buy at the moment is not everyone, but a lot of people, especially in the fantasy space, were saying, all right, Whittington, Tyler Johnson, Demarcus Robinson, or Tutu Atwell. Who's the next Puka from a production perspective now that everyone else is out and Cooper Kupp is down as well? None of them. Puka Nacua is not replaceable, and we learned that real quick. Puka Nacua is not a product of the system. He helped McVay make the system because he's that good of a wide receiver, and you saw it the second he left the field.
It was really foolish of us to just assume that Jordan Whittington, because he was getting some hype as a fifth-round pick as a wide receiver in Sean McVay's offense, was going to step in and get 10 to 12 targets. But we had a lot of people telling us that was going to happen. And the reason people were saying that is because people were applying the logic that since Puka was able to do it, Jordan Whittington will as well. And it was, and again, and Nathan said it perfectly, Puka, he did it because of his talent level, because of the level of wide receiver he is. It has nothing to do with the situation. Puka is elite. He is elite for your dynasty team. You should buy him.
Yep. Trey Benson is another guy that I think this is the perfect prime time to buy young, up-and-coming assets that are not producing right now because they are behind productive veterans. This is why we weren't super big candidates on buying Trey Benson back in July and August, because we knew through the first few weeks of the season, at least James Conner was going to be the number one guy. And not only the number one guy, he was going to get every single relevant carry and touch and opportunity in that offense. He's a team captain. They are monetarily invested in him right now. They went out of their way to keep him for another year when they really could have let him go at 28, 29 years old. And he's been doing really, really well, right? The first 2 games of this year, 20 points apiece. He had a tough game against Detroit in week 3, but that was a rough game overall for the Cardinals against a tough team. Look, James Conner, as long as he is healthy, will continue to be the only relevant productive running back option in that offense. And what does that mean? That means Trey Benson is falling down rankings, because when you get to dynasty rankings and dynasty value in the middle of the season, people realize, we say this all the time, that points win you games, which gets you to the playoffs, which can get you to a championship, which can win you a league and win you money, and money is cool. Trey Benson is not doing any of that right now. He is not getting you points. If you are a rebuild specifically, a reload specifically, and your team isn't looking too good right now, you're 0-3, you're 1-2, and you're like the least productive team in your league, Trey Benson is one of the number one targets I want everyone targeting right now. And it's honestly, apart from my own personal opinion on Trey Benson, which is positive, even if I were wrong about Trey Benson's outlook long-term, it doesn't matter, because it is a guarantee that come this offseason, Benson's price, I kid you not, it's going to double. It's going to double. Because James Conner will not be back. He will not return. They will not pay him again. James Conner will have to move on. They've got to pay other guys. And James Conner has been getting hurt. So, I mean, I honestly, this is one of the more pressing buys that I think I have for you on top of Puka is go get Trey Benson before James Conner goes down for a couple games. And then Benson does go on the field, right? This is a situation very, very similar to Puka. We need to capitalize on this opportunity now while he's not producing, and everyone is so focused on the points and the output of all these players right now in your dynasty league.
So let's talk about another player here that I think is a really good buy. And this is a veteran player, but a veteran that's on a really good contract. You had DJ Moore signing a contract last year that was a four-year, $110 million deal, which is a really nice contract for a wide receiver. Yeah. He's under contract, and the next potential out the Bears have on him is after 2026. So that puts him not only this year, but the 2 years after that. It's a 3-year window, hint, hint. And so looking at that contract security and how much they actually have to pay him, and also, I mean, the dead cap is $12 million even in the last year. I don't think they're going to be cutting DJ Moore. And then when you're looking at what what his value has done so far this season, you're looking at it. He's hovered at wide receiver 18 to 19 pretty much consistently the entire offseason. And since in his first 3 games, he has not scored a touchdown. He's scored 10, 11, and 15 points. He's dropped from the wide receiver 18 to the wide receiver 27. You've seen him lose approximately 15% of his value. And so with Moore, he's just going around a lot of guys I would prefer over him for a couple of reasons. Number one, when you're looking at DJ Moore this season through the first 3 games, he is 5th in the league in targets. He's averaging 9 targets a game. He's got 28 targets. He is 8th in snap share. He's 9th in routes run, right? He's 4th in the league in deep targets, which probably adds up a little bit to why he's been a little bit more hit or miss. He's 9th in the league in unrealized air yards, which basically means what? He's playing with a rookie quarterback that has not yet gotten his feet under him. And as Caleb Williams gets better, DJ Moore's production is going to get better. And so this is a buy for rebuilds and contenders alike. For rebuilds, you know his value is going to go up from here. So I'm totally comfortable buying DJ Moore, because if I do that, I can flip him for a higher price later. And if you're a contender, DJ Moore is going to score points for your team, right? And so I think with this, with these analytics and seeing the volume here, and again, I will follow targets to the end of the earth, and he's getting the targets. And when you're looking at the guys going around DJ Moore in dynasty leagues right now, you're talking about guys like T. Higgins. I would take DJ Moore. He's the wide receiver 1 on his own team. Chris Godwin, I would take DJ Moore. DJ Moore is the wide receiver 1 on his own team. Tank Dell, I would take DJ Moore. DJ Moore is the wide receiver 1 on his own team. Jameson Williams, I would take DJ Moore. DJ Moore is the wide receiver 1 on his own team. Jaden Reed, you get the point. George Pickens.
Did you say he's a wide receiver one on his own team?
So with the thing about DJ Moore, and the reason I would take him over pretty much all of these guys here is because he's the wide receiver one on his own team. So like,
I think that's a really, really
he's
good
going next to
point.
Kyle Pitts. At this point, if you can get out on Pitts for DJ Moore, bye-bye. Honestly, after thinking about that a little bit, I probably wouldn't take DJ Moore over Jaden Reed. That's the only one I was probably
Jaden
not.
Reed.
But the other guys, yes. But
you did get to Jaden Reed. I was like, I'm glad you didn't say that.
But you get the point, right? I think with DJ Moore, you can trade any of those guys to get DJ Moore right now. And again, it doesn't really matter what type of team you have. I think he's a good investment. And again, he's a guy that even if you're a rebuild, again, on our blueprints, we don't advertise for longer than 1 year rebuilds. And so if you're a rebuild, he's going to help you next year and the year after that. And he's going to be a good contending piece for when you turn your rebuild around and contend. And it's a big part of how we build our team blueprints. We obviously want people not to rebuild for more than 1 year. A lot of you guys are finding yourselves in rebuilds right now. And we are absolutely here to help you with that. So we're doing team blueprints all the time over on flockfantasy.com/domain. They've really picked up recently. We've got blueprint 1.0s, blueprint 2.0s, etc. But the best thing to do is just go ahead and sign up for the annual Motherflocker tier with code domain because you get a free team blueprint. And this free team blueprint is going to give you your 3-year outlook, which is what you should be doing for the next 3 years with your dynasty team. It's going to give you your team archetype, which is an in-depth analysis of what your team actually looks like. We're going to give you positional grades. We're going to give you specific trade targets, specific guys you should be trading away. It is everything you need to make sure your dynasty team is headed in the right direction. This is the time where a lot of people make a ton of mistakes with their dynasty team. And so we're here to help you make sure that you are on the right track and you take advantage of leverage that you do have during the season and not in the offseason. So like I said, flockfantasy.com/domain, use code domain, annual Motherflocker to get you a free one, or you can get one a la carte. I'll link that both in the pinned comment in the description. But the next guy here.
Look, I know this is like the 10th concussion that we've seen from Tua Tagovailoa. I know I'm exaggerating there, but obviously he's trying to figure a lot of things out right now with his health and honestly what he's going to do long-term in the NFL. He does have a guaranteed contract though, and I know that doesn't mean a ton in the grand scheme of things if it's, the difference between his health and still playing, but look, he's lost so much value that I think it's just worth the risk of investing in him at a crazy discount right now. Keep Trade Cut has him like outside of the top 100 and he continues to fall right now. Technically, he's value equivalent right now to guys like A.D. Mitchell, Christian Watson, Calvin Ridley, Najee Harris, Khalil Shakir. Like, that's crazy to me. With the situation and how much Miami, is dependent on Tua being on the field. But I understand it to an extent. I don't understand why his price has to be this low when, you have just as many health questions with other guys and they're not being ranked as low as Tua is right now. I also don't think that everyone in your league is going to be ranking Tua this low, right? I've been sending out some feelers for Tua, seeing if this price is legitimate. I don't think this is the case across the board, but if you have a league mate who's freaking out right now about Tua and his health situations, I would go and capitalize and see if you can't get him for honestly like a second. That is the low end of what you could potentially get him for, and I think it's worth the risk. Again, I'm not going to deny that the volatility of Tua and his playing career in the NFL is pretty significant right now, but it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter with the passing volume that he provides when he's on the field. It doesn't matter with the contract that he does have, and that does, play into his decision for sure. So see if you can't get him at a crazy discount.
And again, I think this is a little bit of a discrepancy between keep, trade, cut and what's actually happening in Dynasty, because I don't think anybody's taking these prices for Tua, but like he's valued next to, in terms of quarterbacks, he's valued behind Fields, Carr, and Geno, which you could trade one of those guys off for Tua and feel fine about it. Yeah. Because the thing about Tua, I mean, when you look at his all-time graph on Keep Trade Cut, you've got these random spikes and then these you see in 2022 a random near, and that near was from when he got the concussion that really scared everybody, right? His second concussion. There were baby spikes there, and then he went back up, and then he went back down, and then he went back up last year when he was balling out, and then he sucked and he went back down. But this is the cheapest Tua's ever been from a dynasty standpoint, according to Keep Trade Cut. Again, I think there's a pretty good disconnect between what the community actually thinks of Tua and what they say that they think of Tua on Keep Trade Cut. But with that being said, I do think he is a buy, and I think you're going to get him fairly cheap right now. So he's a pretty good guy to go trade for, especially in Superflex leagues. Let's talk about Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy signed a 3-year, $52 million deal this offseason with the Cleveland Browns. And in his first couple games, after admittedly Jerry Jeudy, when you're looking at him over his first 4 years in the NFL, he's considered a bust in my opinion. The dude was supposed to be better than this. Wide receiver 47, 85, 22, and 50 over his first couple of years. That's not good enough. He does go to a new situation, gets out of Denver, and now we have him in Cleveland playing with Deshaun Watson, who also looks like complete butt cheeks. But with Jeudy had 8 targets in week 1, 6 targets in week 2, and 7 targets in week 3. Not to mention, he's put up double digits 2 of his 3 games. His other game, he had 9 points, even when he really didn't have that good of a game. He only had 27 yards that game. And this is all while only scoring 1 touchdown. So Jerry Jeudy, if they do unlock any touchdown upside with Jerry Jeudy, I think he's flexible in your dynasty leagues. In your deeper 12-team, 14-team leagues, I think Jerry Jeudy's going to be flexible. Not to mention, for his price, he's pretty value insulated, right? When you have the contract and you have the guaranteed situation, you feel pretty good about that. And when you're looking at where he's going from a market value standpoint right now, Ben Sinnott, DeAndre Swift, Jalen Warren, Zach Moss, Javonte Williams, Dontavion Wicks, Chase Brown, Nick Chubb, Darnell Mooney. I would take him over all those guys pretty much. Alec Pierce, Tucker Kraft. I mean, in my opinion, he's like 1 tier below where he should be ranked. But also he could be a pretty good contending asset this year if you want to contend and potentially have him as a depth piece. Even if he's just on your bench, he's nice security, in my opinion, for a contending team. But if you're rebuilding as well, I'm pretty confident that Jerry Jeudy's value is going to maintain over the next couple of years. And if you're rebuilding, again, you're aiming to contend next year. And I think he's a guy that for contenders over the next 3 years, he's not a bad piece at all, and he's really cheap. And so for those teams that need wide receiver depth to go and make a run and to have some injury insurance, I think Jerry Jeudy's a good option for that. Yeah, I'm not super high on the Brown situation as a whole, but Jerry Jeudy is producing a little bit despite all of that, even when Amari Cooper has been getting the majority of the targets there. And so Jeudy, I think, is somebody that also still does have some upside, so you can also grab him, expect him not to do anything from a value standpoint, but if he flashes, maybe he goes up in value a little bit, right? And so I think that's why he's a decent investment. I'm honestly willing to send, like I said, any of the value adjacent guys around him for Jeudy, because I think he could be a good asset for the next 3 years for your dynasty team.
At the very least, he offers competent wide receiver play apart from Amari Cooper, which is what Cleveland's been looking for years, right? And
Correct.
I mean, the contract installation, like you said, he's locked in until 2026, through 2026.
Yes.
So there's no out option until 2027. I mean, this guy, if you want security and you want safety, I mean, he's technically safer in Cleveland than Amari Cooper is for the next 3 years. So just keep that in mind. And the last guy we're going to have here is going to be Bo Nix. And Bo Nix is kind of a polarizing guy, honestly, because he's been very up and down, right? And the conversation and the narratives around Bo Nix have been majority negative, really, since he was drafted by Denver in the top 12 picks. Look, you can't deny that the passing volume is kind of insane. I mean, he's thrown the ball 42, 35, and 36 times. When Sean Payton has a quarterback that he likes, he's going to have him throw the ball this many times. I mean, this is like Drew Brees level passing volume, right? This is so reminiscent of that situation. And to me, Bo Nix has not only demonstrated that he can, provide a ton of passing volume for you from a production perspective, but also his rushing upside is wild. He has had 2 rushing touchdowns in the first 3 weeks of the season and 35, 25, and 47 rushing yards. That's significant. He has offered, I mean, he's gotten you 10 points on the ground in 2 weeks. For a guy that was supposedly Mr. Limited Upside, who was, a Brock Purdy level guy, who, by the way, is valued in the 3rd round of Dynasty startups. What? Who expected this? I'll tell you who expected it. We expected him to have some significant mobility and have higher upside than a lot of people expected once he went to Sean Payton's situation in Denver. And yeah, it's been ugly. He hasn't had any touchdown passes despite that passing volume, right? So there's a ton of negatives here, but it's all about price in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And when you're looking at the situation in Denver, it's either going to get worse and Bo Nix is going to be the quarterback, or it's going to be better and Bo Nix is going to be the quarterback. I mean, they're stuck with this guy, just like they're stuck with Sean Payton for the foreseeable future. He is the guy that they're building their franchise around. And when you're looking at his keep trade cut graph right now, I mean, he's value equivalent to Derrick Henry, who's he's going to be 31 in a couple months. Jordan Mason, who's a Band-Aid starter for the San Fran 49ers. Cooper Kupp, who's not even playing on the field right now. Zach Charbonnet, who's a backup running back. Oh my gosh, Rachaad White is really falling far too.
Yeah.
But look, to me, this is not even a question in a super flex league. You want starting quarterbacks who have, a decent amount of upside. And I think Bo Nix has already shown in the first 3 weeks of his career that he can offer that. Does he have things to work on? Absolutely. Just like every other rookie quarterback has things to work on. Caleb Williams hasn't looked great. Thanks, Shane Waldron. Jaden Daniels, and I mean, he played really well in week 3, but he's got some stuff to work on as well. Michael Penix isn't even on the field yet. Like, at least Bo Nix is getting reps.
Yeah, I mean, everybody remembers Kenny Pickett averaging 11 points a game for your dynasty team when everybody took him in the first round of rookie drafts.
Right.
Bo Nix, like Nathan said, hasn't thrown a touchdown. In fact, he's thrown 4 picks, but he didn't throw any picks last week. And so what you're seeing, this 13, 10, 19 points for Bo Nix. He rushing touchdown in each of those games, but his floor is 10 points.
Yeah, I mean,
if he starts throwing any passing touchdowns, like you're talking about, he's going to be scoring 15 to 17 points a game for you. And in a dynasty landscape where the quarterbacks he's being valued around are guys we weren't even considering a couple months ago. Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, Derek Carr, Geno Smith. I mean, he has more long-term upside in a dynasty league than all of those guys do, in my opinion.
I know people don't want to talk about this, but that rushing production, that's not rushing capability. That is rushing upside. That's 10 points in the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah,
in the rushing game, like.
I mean, technically it's more, right? Because he has 2 touchdowns. He's technically scored 20 of his points on the season from on the ground. Like, and if you watch the game, you saw that that's not something that's fluky. He knows how to move. He knows how to move out of the pocket. He knows how to use his legs to extend plays, and I think you're going to see him do that consistently in that offense. And so I think he's a good value, and he's a young quarterback for your dynasty team.
Yeah, and if anything, trust Sean Payton to continue to develop him as a passer and as an overall quarterback. I think you've seen. I mean, you saw some strides in the Tampa game. That was a tough defense. That was a tough matchup, and he looked a lot better than he did in the first 2 weeks. So
there you go. Some early season buys for your dynasty team. We missed you guys a ton. We didn't forget about you. Had a ton of people asking, "Oh, where's Dynasty Domain?" Yeah, but here's the thing, and here's what you need to take with a grain of salt, even with this video. You really can't have any concrete takeaways from the first 3 weeks of the season, but definitely not week 1 or week 2. And so, you have other dynasty channels out there releasing videos and saying, these were the biggest takeaways. This is what I'm taking away. And the reality is, if you're a good dynasty player, you're not really making any decisions or snap judgments on players after the first 3 weeks of the season. Now, obviously you have things like, Nico has increased his value. Rashee Rice has increased his value, right? I think those things are fair as general pieces of analysis. But in terms of like specific player stock up, down, stuff like that, it's really hard to speculate specifics after 2 weeks. And so what we wanted to do was, I'm not really worried about pumping out videos for you guys on this channel just to pump out videos. I would much rather, and Nathan would much rather, put out quality stuff that's actually going to age well, is actually going to lead to successful dynasty teams, than just put stuff out. And so, we miss making videos. We're going to be back now. We're going to ease back in because, again, we'll have more stuff to talk about as we have more information to digest. But all of this information we've gotten in week 1 and week 2, if you're a good dynasty player, you shouldn't have been making any snap judgments with these first 2 weeks. And so now that we're through 3 weeks, we'll start kind of putting more stuff out there, putting out more advice, and start talking about, okay, we're going to get to the inflection point of dynasty season where you can go rebuild, contend. What should you be doing there? We can talk about some guys maybe that are overvalued or some in-season sells or things like that. And then we'll start updating our rankings and stuff like that here in a couple weeks when, again, we have a much larger sample size. Don't listen to dynasty creators who tell you that there are concrete takeaways from the first 2 weeks of the season. That's all I'm going to say. Make sure you drop a like on the video, though, and make sure if you haven't subscribed and if you play Dynasty, you're going to want to be here, right? We live and breathe Dynasty, and we make Dynasty content all year round. You're going to want to be here to make sure that you have an edge up on your league mates, so make sure you're subscribed. Appreciate you guys so much, and we'll see you later.